I enjoy coming here.
The microphone is there.
Do I need a microphone?
Yes.
Yes.
What do you mean I need a microphone? Is that better? Okay, so I think I was louder. My name is Meynell. I am from England, and I, by profession, am known as a playworker. And I've been working with children in the context of their play for about 51 years. I've worked everywhere you could probably imagine, apart from two places where I have never worked with children. One is in a prison. There's a whole profession of people providing support in children's play in prisons. And the other, and I don't regret not working in a prison because it's horrific. The other one I do regret, I've never worked on a cruise line. I think that could be quite fun, but not now. I'm too busy doing other things. When I'm not travelling the world, talking about play, talking to people about play, trying to affect the way we work to support play, increase people's understanding of play, I manage what in England is known as an adventure playground. Now this is not a play area, it's not swings and slides where children go with their parents. It's a staff provision staffed by trained and experienced adults who are there solely to support the children's play. There's no other agenda. Because if it's about play, it's actually about play. Now, in some places you get the conflation of play and learning, play and development, but as far as my work, my everyday work, my only interest is providing opportunities for children to play. Now you might be saying to yourself, why? Well, if you're not saying to yourself why, just say it mentally now, and then I'll answer your question. Why? Because everything I know, everything I've studied, everything I've learned tells me that the most important thing in children's lives is the opportunity to play. Now, of course, that gets a little bit complicated because when we talk about the opportunity to play, we then also need to be clear in what we think play is. Now, I engage with a lot of the leading academics, living and dead. Obviously, I don't communicate with the dead ones anymore. Maybe I do.
Why don't we start by defining play?
Well, because you can't define play, John. Play is impossible. Play is impossible to define. You all know what play is because you've played. And if you try to describe what play is, you're going to come up with different ways of thinking about it. So I can't define play, but I can do my best shot at trying to gain a common understanding of play. I think that's the best we can do. And for me, the common understanding about play is if a child is doing what they want to do in the way that they want to do it and can quit doing it at any time, it is likely to be play. Now, there's no adult in that picture. There's no one guiding, directing, or telling them what to do. They're just leaving the child to get on with it. Now, as a professional play worker, sometimes children start doing things in their play that I and my colleagues are very uncomfortable with. When I teach people about this, I say we have 3 words that we have to bear in mind when children start getting into play that we're uncomfortable with. And those 3 words are, get over it. Now, because the issue's mine, not the children. Now, if that play that they're getting involved in is going to cause harm to themselves or harm to somebody else, then we might step in. Because whilst play is not always fun and enjoyable, it shouldn't lead to you being devastated and really, really upset. Except, of course, if you're playing at experiencing those emotions, which, of course, children will. I had 2 children. They were best friends. One was 5, one was 4. They were at an after-school club. Kai was one of the names of it. Kai and Casper. Anyway, best of friends. And they decided to have a fight. So we know the children, we know they're best of friends, no one steps in, because we don't need to. Kai is lying on the floor, Casper's on top, and Casper punches him in the face and goes, "Does that hurt?" Kai lying on the floor goes like, "No, that didn't hurt." Poof, poof. "Did that hurt?" And Casper goes, "No, that didn't hurt." This carried on for a while. Eventually, Casper hit Kai's nose and blood went everywhere. Now, they were a little bit upset, and at this point the staff stepped in to perform first aid. And whilst that was happening, we could hear the conversation between the two boys, and Kai goes, "You know, I was lying on the floor and you hit me, you said, did that hurt?" And I said, "No, it did." And Casper goes, "Yeah, when you hit me, that really hurt as well." And they had this whole analysis of it, but that was play. And because we knew the children, no one stepped in, and they were playing with the experience of hitting and hurting and pain, and what's that like, especially with your best friend. But likewise, as physical hurt, we also have to think about emotional hurt. And too often when we think about risk, we only end up thinking about the physical. But we need to think about the emotional. And so we had a routine where we had a tin of biscuits after snack. Not healthy eating. This is England. And one of the children would give the biscuits out, and the rule was 1 biscuit per person. And this girl went up to her best friend, and her best friend says, "Ooh, can I have 2? Well, of course you're going to give your best friend 2 biscuits, aren't you? But the rule is 1 biscuit. And this child knew this was the rule. And she said to her best friend, "No, you can only have 1. And that was an emotional risk, because her best friend could have got very upset about it. I digress. My career in working with children has taken me to so many different places. I've worked in 3 different continents with children, and that's America, Europe and Asia. I've written a lot about play, and I read extensively, and I also have the ear of many of the leading academics. We have exchanges. And I was doing a seminar, and someone said to me, "Do insects play?" I thought, that's a really good question. I've got no idea. But I got a friend that writes about animals. I'll email him. And he got back to me and said, "Well, there's not a lot of research on this area, but there is some dialogue about whether ants play with each other with their antennae." Fascinating.
The example you just said with the 2 best friends hitting one another is great, and I want to ask you a question. How acceptable is this kind of play in a structured environment like a school? And what in the specific example you gave, because it's something that all parents and teachers in all people in education we have faced, in this example, what is the point that the teacher should, or the adult should be doing?
Well, the first thing is, how well do you know the children? How well can you understand what is happening? The second thing is, who's watching? You know, if you've got people who don't understand what you're doing, watching, then you might step in earlier. If it's not written out in your philosophies and methodology of working, then you might intervene sooner. Because everybody who's bought into the service, and whether that's my after-school club, my adventure playground, or a school or a nursery, people need to know what they've bought into. And if we go beyond that, then that creates a tension and a friction which we don't need. I have an example of this. I don't have an issue. It's not in a school, so we're not. Remember, this is just about the play. I don't have an issue with children swearing. If they're swearing, they're doing it for one of 3 reasons. 1, that they need to swear. 2, they're mimicking language. They hear at home. And 3, for the fear of being rude, 3, they are trying out words that they have heard in what they consider to be a safe space. But if I've got adults there who don't understand that, they can get very concerned. Oh, you're letting the children swear. What sort of place is this? I don't want my child going there. And I had that once. I had a parent ring me up after a session and say, my child's come home and they heard the other children saying this and this and this. It wasn't particularly bad swearing. Sorry, just thinking of the particularly bad swearing. It wasn't particularly bad swearing. And I said to them, have you read the guide I've given you about the way we work? Oh yes, I've read all of that. So I read him the paragraph about swearing. He goes, yeah, I don't want to hear about all that rubbish. And I said, well, this is the document you signed to say you've read. This is the way we work. If you're not comfortable with it, take your child somewhere else. And I think that's really important. In a school environment, we're trying to teach through the children's everyday lived experiences about respect, about boundaries, about trust, about care. Because there is, in a school, whilst a lot of it's about play, there is also a little bit of an agenda about developing the child, developing the character. And so you'd know the children, you'd watch, and you would intervene if you thought it was going too far. And I've been here for 2 weeks. I've watched lots of little fights. Because it happens. There's a falling out. And I've seen it in many, many different parts of the school. There was one yesterday. There was a basket. I hope this doesn't label any classes, okay? Sorry if it does, but I want to keep it as anonymous as I possibly can. There was a little plastic shopping trolley. In the shopping trolley were lots of pine cones. And one child was pushing the shopping trolley around. And another child had taken out some pine cones. The child who was pushing the trolley around was trying to get all the pine cones back in the trolley. So these little children were kind of like pushing at each other, and this one was pulling at the pine cones that had a string on it. Come on, give me the pine cone, give me the pine cone. And you could see the anger in his face. And eventually, he got the pine cone, and as he's slowly, little child, slowly walking back to the trolley, the other kid nips to the trolley, gets another pine cone out. So this continued for quite some time. Fascinating to watch. And none of the teachers intervened, which I was so pleased about, because this is something where the children can work out their boundaries, work out what's going on. It wasn't like they were swinging punches. And no one, one child might get pushed over. In the end, the trolley got pushed over. The child who had been taken out of the trolley got bored and went off and played with something else, which really upset the other child, who was fighting him to get them back. Because they were on different, what we would call, they were engaged in different play frames in the same space. So different experiences, different things they wanted to do. There are times when it's appropriate to step in and times when it isn't. And that will be a judgment call made by every teacher with their knowledge of the children at that time. And there may be times, and that knowledge, and then also the environment you're in. Some places might not be a good place where the child could be knocked over, or pushed, or punched, or whatever. And so you'll make those adjustments. There's lots and lots of things to think about. Sometimes people think it's an easy job working with children. But after 51 years of doing it, I believe that when you're working with children with the impetus of supporting their play, it's the hardest job, because you don't have a plan. You don't know what's going to happen, because play is spontaneous. It just erupts in front of you. You can't plan for it. You can put resources in place. You may have ideas what might happen, but you can't plan for it. I never know what's going to happen from one session to the next.
It's clear from what you say that the judgment call of the adult plays a very important role in managing risky play and intervening. But what can we, education people and parents, of course, can do in order to develop a good judgment?
Well, the first thing is to learn this. It's like the proverbial count to 10 for more harmony. It's so important that we don't just leap in. If there's about to be instant death, don't wait. All right? Someone's about to lose a limb or an eye, don't wait. Yeah? Run faster than you've ever run in your life before.
Right.
But
So safety is a major threshold, right?
yeah. But otherwise, here's something I learned in Sweden. It's called the 3-step rule. I love it. If you see something happening in front of you, where the children are in conflict, or doing something that's maybe a little bit risky, the Swedish 3-step rule. Observe what is happening. Take 1 step back. Take a 2nd step back. Take a 3rd step back. All the time watching what's going on. Get out the way, let it evolve. And then you had time to consider. So when we make a snap judgment, when we jump into something, that's when the problems start. Because we are not giving children the opportunities to work things out for themselves. Because I've been there, I've done that, I'm an adult, I'll tell you how to do it. Yeah? Doesn't go down very well. Here's an interesting statistic. The incidence of workplace bullying reported to managers has been going up like this. And you know why it's been going up like that? Because children are being told, if someone bullies you, go and tell an adult. Children are no longer able to deal with bullying. So they get to work and they find they're being bullied at work. They don't have a strategy for dealing with it. So they tell the manager. Because that's your adult as an adult in the workplace. So it's very complex. If we start taking every experience, we start taking experiences away from children, then that has an impact on their later life. So as parents, if the children are doing something you're concerned about, it's really important to watch and observe, make judgments, give the children a chance to work things out. Sometimes children hurt themselves. I'm sorry, it's a fact of life. Yeah. 3 children in my family. They're 2 are adults. One's an adult in training. I suppose the bigger one's an adult in training as well. She's 24. Adults in training and a 7-year-old. And there have been times when we just want to leap in. But they were in times you've got to say stop, and that they're going to hurt themselves. And it's horrible when your child hurts themselves. It's horrible when any child hurts themselves. As a professional working with children, I hate it when a child hurts themselves. But didn't hate it quite so much before I became a parent. But once I was a parent, I don't want children hurting themselves. It hurts me when a child gets hurt. But nevertheless, if I wrap them up in cotton wool so they don't get hurt, then they're not going to have the best experiences that they could have. So it's really important that holding back as a parent, as a professional, and making a considered judgment. I've got an apartment in Airbnb here, and the family came out for a week. But there's stairs between the 2 levels, and they obviously didn't show you this on the Airbnb booking. But there's this kind of a spiral staircase, and the gap going down on this side is 2 meters by 1 meter at the steepest part. I've got a 7-year-old who would easily fit through that gap and fall to the floor below. That freaked me out when I saw it. But I didn't say to her, don't go down the stairs. I just said to her, look at this gap and think about what might happen if you fall through it. And hold on to the banister and make sure mummy or daddy's watching when you go down the stairs. So we put some safeguards in place. We kind of like did a risk assessment and worked out what measures we needed to put in place to make it as safe as possible, but not stopping her doing it. I've no idea what the original question was.
I don't remember either. But anyway, that's a nice example. Let me ask you that. Nuala is the name of his 7-year-old.
I call her small.
Yeah,
because she's little.
He has 3 lovely daughters. Nuala is the 7-year-old. So, did Nuala try to get into the gap after you tell her that?
No, she didn't. She recognised. You see, this is the other thing. Children have incredible capability of making risk assessments. Even the little babies, the crawlers. And there was an experiment conducted years ago known as the glass floor experiment. Some of you may have heard of it. There's some scientists in a laboratory had a floor, had a drop off, and then there was glass over it. So it was safe. They let the babies crawl. And the baby stopped at the edge. They made the judgment that actually that's a drop. And these are crawlers. So young, very young. But they made a judgment that actually that's not safe, I'm not going to do it. So we need to have a little trust in our children's capabilities. Of course, if your child's got to 5 or 6 by now, and you've never let them take risks, you've ruined them in the nicest possible way. Because they won't develop that risk assessment, judgment. Because that's part of what you do when you're growing up. You can watch it here. You can watch it on the boat at the back. When children climb up and then they think about, do I climb down? Do I jump off? How do I do this? I was watching children playing in the tyres earlier today, and they're making judgments about climbing on the tyres, going inside the tyres. Children are doing it all the time.
This is a major point, Meynell said, and we see it in school all the time. Children are, as he said, have a great way to assess risk and assess and protect themselves, as long as we trust them, transfer to them the responsibility for their own life, and not keep it for ourselves, and of course teach them some things, some basic rules. But we see it every day in our school. And this is a nice answer to many of you that come in school when we come to talk with me for the first time and have the first interview. And many times you ask me, are you afraid of the stairs and how kids go up by using the stairs and everything? I have to tell you that stairs is a major tool to help children develop their risk assessment.
Well, not only do they develop risk assessment, they're developing a whole sense of other things. Balance. I talk about physical literacy. Physical literacy is understanding your body, finding out what it can do. So stairs is great for that, because you're making judgments about distance and depth, balance, what you need to hold on to, what you don't need to hold on to, how close you are to the person in front, all those sorts of things. Those are judgments you're making all the time. I was going to say something else, it's gone out of my mind. Sorry, it'll come back.
You're getting older.
He's so rude. But it's true, I am.
So all this discussion we have right now, it's like it seems like we consider that risk is inevitable in play. Is that correct?
Risk is just one of the many things that will happen in play, and that level of risk will vary depending on the child and the support they're given. In my work, I have a taxonomy of play, and in that taxonomy we list 16 different types of play which children need to access in order to have a rich play diet. And one of those is deep play. Now, deep play, that's
something like playing?
Something like broken chair.
The one with the yellow dot.
The one with the yellow dot, yeah. Are you okay?
Yes.
All right. That was not risk-taking, that was an accident. Yeah. I'll come back to deep play in a moment, but this just gives me this opportunity to talk about this. If a child gets hurt because there's something there that you should have dealt with, like there shouldn't be a broken chair, they should have been checked before they came out, then it's your responsibility. No? You know, if there's broken glass, suppose some glass gets broken in a van and it's not all cleared up and a child gets hurt, you, the parent, should be very angry at the school. Don't sue them, doesn't achieve anything. Yeah? Momentary financial gain for a lifetime of regret. It's not worth doing.
Nobody has ever sued us.
Not yet.
No.
No,
Are you being sued?
I have take the fifth on that. I've never actually been sued, no.
In play?
I've had a couple of serious accidents in 51 years, but they weren't our fault. So, no, I've never been sued. Hazards should be avoided. You know, the organisation's responsibility is to remove hazards, to do your checks, regular checks on structures, on fabric that's around, and how things are stacked. Because if that goes wrong, that's not risk-taking. That's organisational stupidity.
Let's talk a little about this. It's very important. Let's describe a hazard. An edge in a furniture is a hazard. Should we put rubber everywhere?
Well, that's back to the cotton wool. I mean, we're trying to help children learn the place where they are in the world. So, a piece of if you've got a piece of furniture that ends in a spike, I would suggest you get rid of it. But a piece of furniture that's a piece of furniture with a rounded edge, that's really not a problem. Digging in the earth, whilst it might look manky and horrible, is not a hazard. Yeah? If you had wild animals defecating in that and it wasn't cleaned up, that's a hazard. That's something that you should deal with. Yeah? If this strut here at the bottom of the house is not checked weekly and the house collapses, that's not good. So those are hazards. I have lots of structures. We check them every week. Everything is checked, and if it needs replacing, the thing is placed out of bounds until it needs replacing. Those are hazards. And then you have to make a judgment. So I was just looking to see if there's any of the AstroTurf that's lifted, and then you have to look at that and go, well, how likely is that going to be that someone's going to hurt themselves on that? And if they're going to hurt themselves on that, then I need to do something about it, because that's not risk-taking. Risk-taking is when you engage in something. So deep play is the ultimate risk-taking. It's physically when children play with their own mortality. So that sort of play wouldn't happen in an institution, whether it's a school or a staff playground or anything like that. Because actually we have to draw the line somewhere, and we're going to draw the line at you doing something that might mean you kill yourself. Yeah? But outside of here, you'll get not so much little children, but the bigger children riding bikes in places they shouldn't really ride bikes. One example that's given in the literature is riding a push bike across the parapet of a bridge. Yeah?
Years ago, I want to give you some food for thought. Years ago, I had the conversation with our good friend Tom, teacher Tom, another good friend of us from USA. He comes often to our school. Tom had just, he's a famous brand actually, if you speak to him. Tom has been just back by Australia, his first trip in Australia, and he was so much excited about what he see there. So he was very enthusiastic to describe me the playground he saw, and he told me it was so fantastic that I wanted to see the designer, and I congratulated him. I told him, this is the best playground I've ever seen. What was the philosophy that we designed it? And they told him, we wanted to make a space that a kid may break a leg. Please comment on that.
In the UK, we have what is called the Managing Risk in Play provision. I knew it would come to me. And In the UK, we have a health and safety executive. They have endorsed this document. And in the document it says, children should be able to take risks. I can't remember the actual phrasing of it, but basically it talks about an unacceptable risk is defined as something that would keep an adult off work for 3 days or more. So anything up to that is acceptable. So a broken leg is an acceptable risk. A broken arm, an acceptable risk. Horrible, but acceptable. Multiple compound fracture on your leg, not acceptable. Yeah? So it's about thinking about that. Now, any parent in their right mind would be slightly horrified by what I just said. You know, you think, I don't want my child to break a leg, but it could so easily happen. I had a child break an arm. They were sitting on the floor and leant backwards. They broke an arm. A child could step off the edge of that pit and break a leg. The likelihood of it happening is really small, but nevertheless it could happen, and it would be acceptable. And I'd want you to be upset, but accepting, because it could happen. No one wants it to happen.
Our doorman, Nectarius, who maybe...
Oh, he was playing football. That's just a stupid thing
He
to do.
broke his leg by playing football in here, and he's absent for about a month.
He's a grown...
And this is more than 3 days. The 3 days rule says.
He's a grown man playing football. Leave that for the children. No. I understand that there are lots of grown men playing football, but, you know, the amount of money they get paid for it, they probably wouldn't mind having a few months off with a broken leg.
Many years ago, we had a prime minister that broke his leg by playing football.
It happens. Breaks happen. Not all bodies are born equal. In our children, they develop at different places. The great thing is when children break things, they heal quicker than adults do. So also bear that one in mind. Common breaks are collarbones, arms.
I want to say here something.
I have seen a child face plant straight down, break their nose. That was very messy to clean up. Go on, John.
The truth is, we operate the school for 14 years now. Every year we have 2 or 3 kids that we have to take them for stitches in some hospital. Never we had an accident happen by a risky kind of play, a play including risk. He doesn't like the term risky play.
No, risk-taking in play,
Yeah.
not risky play. I'm very picky about that because I think language is really important. Risky play would imply that there are whole loads of different sorts of play. But there is only one sort of play, and that is play. And any adjective we attach, they keep on talking to me about free play. Like no, there's such thing as free play. If you have free play, then you have structured play. If it's structured play, it's actually not play, is it? It's an activity. So please, no free play, no risky play, just play, because that's what children do.
Can we say freely chosen play?
Well, that's... How academic do you want me to get?
Be my guest.
We often talk about players being freely chosen. There was the world's leading expert on play was a man by the name of Brian Sutton Smith, who died a few years ago. Some of you may have heard the name. He was one of my friends, and we sat down one day, just him and me, for about 6 hours, and we spent the whole day talking about play. At one point he said to me, Meynell, I spent my whole life studying play, I still don't know what it is. I looked at my watch and said, Brian, isn't it time we went to the pub? We popped off to the pub and we carried on talking about play, and one of the things he said is there are so many reasons why children will join in play. And yes, we use the phrase freely chosen. The child chooses to join in the play. But actually when we break it down, they don't necessarily freely choose to join in that play. Hands up if you've got an older sibling, an older brother or sister. Huh? You, right? When you were a child, how many times did your older brother or sister say to you, come and play this with me now, and I'll do what you want afterwards? Yeah, you got that? How many times did they lie? All right? And, you did it once. They didn't come and do what you wanted. So you tried the next time, still didn't do it. And the third, the fourth, the fifth. But you're still that little bit of hope that they're going to come back to you and do what you want. Is that freely chosen or is that coercion? Yeah? I don't know if it's a freely chosen choice to go and join in that play. Yeah? Or how about when you're with a group of, you're a child, you're with a group of playmates, and someone's decided this is the game we're going to play, and you are going to take on that role. And they've told you what you're going to do in that play. And then they tell you how you're going to do what you're going to do in that play. You're still playing, but is it freely chosen? You asked for this. Is it freely chosen? I don't know. And there's so many other reasons why children join in play. But then you can turn the whole thing on its head. Have I lost any of you yet? Because you can watch it on the replay. I hope. Then you can turn the whole thing on its head and go, but I've chosen to join in that game with my sister, brother, because of my hope. So I am actually freely choosing. And I've chosen to be part of this group of children and take on this role that they've given me. So I am freely choosing. So it's really complicated. When I'm talking about play, I'm talking about making a choice to join in. It might not be freely chosen, but I am making that choice to join in, to either join in that play, everything that entails, or to step away from that play and go and do something else. That's about choice. So when I said earlier, when I'm talking about play, we're talking about when a child chooses what they're going to do and the way they're going to do it. And there's no one making them do that. In the end, that's your own choice. That's when it is truly play. And that drive to play comes from within. We've all got it. Adults, you still have the drive to play, but now you might more likely to call it leisure or recreation, or sports, or a hobby. But it's still about play. It doesn't go away as you get older, it just gets renamed. And that is because when you become a teenager, when a child is born, they have hundreds of millions of synapses in their brain. And these are all parts that make up neural connections, pathways. And not just about play, but your brain is busy making all these pathways and getting rid of all the bits that it doesn't want anymore. And this is most fundamental in children between the ages of 0 and 6, and a little bit more up to 8. So what they do and the opportunities they have and the experiences they're able to take part in their play is fundamental. The brain has a plasticity to it when children are young, and repeated behaviour helps you develop these neural pathways. There's a lot of writing about this from a lot of people. There's a discussion about this statistic, but basically, if you sit down in a classroom and are taught something, you have to repeat it many times for it to be fully understood, fully absorbed by the brain. But if you do it through play, if the child is playing and they're absorbing the same sort of thing, then they learn that in, I don't know, 1/100th of the number of repetitions. So that's really, really important. You'll see a child doing the same thing over and over and over again in their play. Don't stop them, because it's really important for their learning of whatever it is they're learning. Because and this is really important because there is this conflation between play and learning. When children play, they learn, but they don't play in order to learn. Yeah? Play is what they do. That's their default behaviour, And when they're playing, they learn stuff. The moment an adult says, oh, well, I'll get you to play this and you'll learn that, that's not play anymore, that's an activity.
There's nothing wrong with activities. It's not play.
It's not play.
But it's a nice question. No, I know the answer, and you know the answer, but I want to ask you. Can an activity be turned into play? And how?
This was a difficult question. And he says he knows the answer. He knows the right answer. Do I know the right answer? He's built me up as an expert. I know some stuff, but not everything. Don't ever quote me on that, all right? I can set up, okay, here's an example. It's slightly out of our age range, which is a good example. I've got a whole lot of candle making equipment. The children have got no idea how to make candles. So I got it out, and I ran a session where I showed the children what to do and how to do it. That's an activity. It's structured by an adult in order to inform or help the children learn something. In this case, learn how to make candles. It was still fun. It was still full of joy and excitement and exploration. And after I finished my explaining, some children carried on making candles. And at some point in this whole process, their mode of engagement changed from one of being instructed to one of exploration to one of play. So children can slip into that mode of play, whatever is happening. So an adult a teacher could set up a classroom activity. As long as the teacher recognises this is a classroom activity, the child could become so absorbed in what they're doing that they become playing. And they've tuned out the words of the adult. They're fully engaged, immersed in their play. It's what's called the flow state. Some of you may have heard of the Hungarian psychologist by the name of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, died a couple of years ago, another friend of mine. He coined the term flow, and that was about being immersed in the moment. And the wonderful example he gave to really concentrate on flow is a free climber. So someone that climbs but without ropes, totally focused on what they're doing, totally in that one space. And that's where children go. Watch children as they get immersed in their play. The rest of the world disappears. And that's where the adult comes in. Because when the rest of the world disappears, we need to be there, like a giant, with our palm out. And the play is happening there, and we're keeping the world away. Because the child doesn't want to be disturbed.
But when an adult is entitled to get in play, I mean, when an adult is normal to play with the children,
Well,
when they invite him,
I try to ignore children, not because I don't like them. I don't, it's irrelevant. I can say that after 51 years of working with them, surely. I try to ignore children because, especially nowadays, the society that children are growing up in, if you look at a child and they catch your eye, they think you want to say something to them, or they think you're expected to say something to the adult. So I train my staff to treat to respond to the children in the same way you would to a feral dog. You look away. Don't get eye contact with a feral dog, because you never know what will happen. If we look away from the children, then there's the possibility that they will stay immersed in what they're immersed in. And they, just walk towards me, John. Here's a child walking towards me. I walk this way. Yeah? Because that child may be walking to you and me, but in reality, that child is still right in that flow of whatever it was they were doing, crossing that river, walking that bridge. You have no idea what's going on inside that child's head. But the moment I look at you, And as a child, you see me looking at you, that drags you out of your play. Yeah? If he wants to talk to me, if he wants my attention, he will catch it. He will mention my name. He will say something. He will touch me. Might try to trip me up. Whatever. And at that point, yes, I will engage. When do I invite join in the children's play? When they ask me to. I saw a wonderful example of that in school. One of the teachers, it was out here, it was in this space. One of the teachers was dragged into a running and chasing game with the children. And that was great, responded to the invite from the children, got involved. But I spent some time watching her, and she very quickly moved her role onto another child and moved herself away again. So the children were playing. That was absolutely brilliant. That was really, really good. I was really pleased to see that.
I just want to say exactly something on what you said. One of the things we don't want to see in a teacher, but of course it may happen, and we try to take it out of school, is to have kids play, and then the teacher gets in and tries to direct the play. Or an adult, not say the teacher. Sometimes it's normal, I mean, sometimes it's spontaneous.
Sometimes we play with our children, we play board games with our children. And that's really important. It's not, we're not really playing, the children might or might not be playing, but that is also about being with that adult. And that's really important for children as well, to have time with parents, to have time with the teachers they really like, and so they will do things to get that attention. Some children will pretend to be injured, because they know when they get injured, they get picked up and given a hug.
We're talking about Olympiacos players in the yesterday game. They were all the time were down.
Sometimes children will play a game with you just to be close to you, just to get your attention. I read a story. It's probably not a true story, and I'll paraphrase it. A woman who is a teacher comes home from school and she tells her husband about something the children have been writing about. And she said one of the children wrote this most distressing thing. The children have been writing about, what do you want to be? And one child wrote, I want to be a mobile phone. And the essay went on to talk about, because I'm always being looked at, I'm always being cared for, I'm always being engaged with. Except, you can imagine, can't you, the sort of stuff going on. And the dad goes, that's shocking. Which child was it? And the mother said, our own. Yeah? So that's just a warning about phones. Because I'm not against technology, but I am against not engaging with our children. And, if you're not going to engage with the children, and this probably doesn't apply to any of you because you've come here, if you're not going to engage with your children, why did you bother having them? Yeah? Unfortunately, I know quite a few people that have had children because they're the latest fashion accessory. Yeah? First you get married, then you get a nice house, then you get a nice car, and then you have a child. Because that's what you do. But I think I could go off on a rant there, but maybe I shouldn't. Joining in children's play, having the opportunities for children to join in with you and their play is really, really important. But not at the expense of them being able to play on their own or with their friends. So, being a parent, being a teacher, not easy things to be. Because you've got to be alert, you've got to be aware, and you've got to be on the ball. And parents, most parents go to work. And they come home at the end of the day, they're tired. And suddenly, you've come in after a hard day work, I'm going to assume everyone works hard. You've come in after a hard day work, and this bundle of energy comes flying towards you. Yay, daddy, mummy, you're home. And they just want your attention. And you want your cup of tea, or your cup of coffee, or your glass of wine, or whatever it is you get when you get home. A glass of orange juice, sorry. Yes, absolutely. And we don't have the energy, but we need to somehow find that energy. You know, the teacher arrives at school one morning. Sorry, the teacher arrives at school one morning, one Monday morning, having been partying Sunday night, has to still be 100% ready, however you feel. And you'll find that the teachers here are, that's what teachers do. You switch into that. Yeah? I can go into a session with my children on my playground absolutely shattered. Give me 20 minutes of children being there, I'm buzzing. Because children give you this energy if you're open to receiving it. We've not given anybody a chance to ask any questions yet, John.
Now we'll do. Whoever wants to ask something. And ask as parents, as adults, as future Dorothys, most of you, or existing Dorothys.
Oh,
I'll have another question.
you have another question?
I have.
Did I give the answer to the last question? You knew the answer to
I don't remember what I answered, what I asked. But
and he tells me I'm getting old.
so how much play you can get into school?
How much play can you get in a school?
Yeah. Because you know all those people that pay us every month to assist and have children that develop, that move on their life, that they go to the elementary school in full blown, in full speed. And
I think that with your 0 to 3-year-olds, doing anything other than providing opportunities for play is a disservice to the child. He probably doesn't like that answer. I don't think there is a need to structure or teach in that age group. I think that's detrimental to their brain development. But providing an environment which is full of the most beautiful, wonderful resources which children are able to engage with in ways of their choosing and continue to engage. The problem with a school is that there has to be a structure. There has to be a start time. There has to be a lunch time. There has to be a sleep time. There has to be a finish time. Yeah? If your child wasn't at school and you're doing all this at home, then you'd give the food when the child was hungry. The child would sleep when the child was tired. And the rest of the time they would just engage with what's around them. And sometimes we do need to prompt. We need to make little provocations or sparks for that play to happen. So, you might just grab some Play-Doh and sit down at a table and make Play-Doh. In fact, whenever my daughter wanted to make Play-Doh, I had to join in with my own Play-Doh at the same table. And she would always take whatever tool it was I was using. Oh, no, Daddy, I'm using that one. Brat. No, lovely child. Yeah. Or I roll some piece out. I've spent ages rolling this really nice flat sheet of Play-Doh. I remember this vividly. You see how much this hurt me. I rolled this wonderful flat sheet of Play-Doh, and she took it. She took my Play-Doh and used it. Not the way I would have used it. Outrageous. But I wasn't interfering with her play. I was alongside. And she was sparked by what I was doing. Now, I hadn't planned anything. I was actually playing for me. Because we need to play too. Never forget that. Never too old to play. George Bernard Shaw said, you don't stop playing because you get old because you stop playing. And this comes back to me. Go on.
How do we do these things when we work, in my case, in an environment that they are afraid of observing? Sometimes people think that if you just observe, you don't do your work.
Can't work for us.
Firstly, you tell your organisation that they're misunderstanding what you're doing. When I say that I don't talk to the children, it doesn't mean I'm not working. I am keenly observant. I'm aware of what is going on here and over there. I also have the benefit of divergent eyes. So I can see this whole space. I'm weird, I work with that, it's okay. You have to be able to explain what you're doing. If you're working in an environment and you're observing what is happening, then you also perhaps need to record some of your observations, either written or audio, so that those who say you're not doing anything, you can explain, this is what I've done, this is what I've observed, and because of what I have observed, this is enough. And because of what I observed, this.
Is that playing? He's playing.
Guess the age of the driver. Okay.
My Alfa Romeo does exactly the same. I have an 1972 Alfa Romeo with three Webers. Makes exactly the same noise.
And because I have been observing, these are some changes I'm going to make. So when I talk about observing, I tell people you're observing for 4 reasons. The first is so you can understand more about play. The more we watch play, the more we think about the play, the more we know about the play. The second, how can I better resource the environment? I'm watching the child at play, I see how they're using materials. I've watched it for 3 months and no one has touched that. What is wrong with that? How do I change that? Do I need to take it out? Do I need to display it differently? Do I need to offer a provocation with it? The third reason for watching play is one in the UK we call safeguarding. I'm watching for behaviours in the children which might make me think they are being abused at home. Neglected, emotional abuse or sexual abuse or physical abuse. So I'm watching for that because if that is happening, then I need to protect that child. And I will need to follow the appropriate procedures for the country I'm working in. And the fourth reason for observing children, I've no idea. That's another one that's gone. But you can make it up. You know, I know there's 4 good reasons for observing. Yeah, we don't always know the reason. The more we understand what they're doing, the more we can support their doing. And this works as much for teachers as it does for parents. You know, if the child is, you know, by watching what the child is doing, they might have an idea that if you supplied this, they might enjoy it. They might play with it. Or if it was placed differently, they would use it differently. That's not to say the way they're using it's wrong, but you're thinking of possibilities. Always thinking of possibilities. What can I add? And if we're not watching, it becomes really difficult. But of course there is a problem with the watching, with observing children, which is the classic I had from my children. So I'd walk through one of their play spaces at home. They'd go like, you can't see me. Don't watch what I'm doing. Huh? So we have to go through like this. Deliberately not watching. Deliberately not watching. Because that, suddenly they're in some play, and in their heads they don't want you to watch. And David Sobel writes about children's special places and children's secret places, and how children need at times to be hidden away from the adult eye. Now that's really important. In England we have an inspection regime called Ofsted. Ofsted inspect the children in provision to be supervised. And that word supervised has created many problems until they very kindly define supervision as within sight or sound. So as long as you can hear them scream, you're supervising them. Yeah? And then you'll move quickly to where that scream is and realise they're just winding you up or playing with you. So observation is very, very important in our work, in our lives as parents. Never ignoring, but not necessarily communicating.
This last point, Meynell, just did, is a great, way to talk about something that you parents all the time come and ask in our school. It has to do why the play of the children is different in school and why it is different when, for example, you are in a play date or in a party, that you are there, children know you are there, so sometimes, and it's very often, I have this discussion with you all the time, it's very usual that they have a more aggressive type of play, a different way, and many times parents come to school and say, but you tell me they don't hit another, but I saw them in the party in the weekend, they were playing, but this has to do with something that happened in school. No, it has to do because you are there. It's exactly what you said.
Children will play differently around different people. I find this fascinating. They know where your limits are. It's as though they can smell it. Yeah, they can smell something about you that makes a definition about what they can or cannot do. And that will happen on play dates. Yeah. Two children, two families. They play at your house, it goes one way. They play at their house, it's a different play. They play in the park, it's yet another different play. They play on the beach, it's yet another different play. Because the environment affects the play. And subtle changes in the environment. And the environment is not just the physical space, not just the resources in it, it's the weather. Yeah? The other thing that affects children's play is how they feel. Yeah? You will have emotions, and different days you feel in different ways. And some days you wake up feeling great, and some days you wake up feeling like, why? Children have that too. They can't articulate it. They can't explain it to you. But observe the child and you will see those days. My family got back from Greece last night, and the little one slept for 12 hours. She's not slept for 12 hours forever. And then this morning, she got woken up because the next door neighbour is having some trees cut down. Now, she loves everything that's living, and she is distressed for the trees. So she's been remorseless all day. This is affecting her mood. I don't know how many of you go down the alternative medicine route, but you might know that silver spray, is very healing. She's been spraying our plants in the garden with silver spray so they could pass it on to the trees who are being cut. Yeah? Sensitivity of children is amazing. And sometimes we don't tune into that. We're not aware, we're not thinking about their sensitivity. And it's really important to think about sensitivity. Not all children are robust. And the one who's robust today might not be so robust tomorrow. And all of this is really, really important in supporting children's play. How much play should happen in a school was a question we were at before. Because I diverge, I'm sorry. There's so much going on in my brain. And the answer is as much as possible. I talk about the 0 to 3s and how most of it should be about play. And of course, by the time we get to the 5, 6-year-olds, there needs to be more structure because they've got to be ready to go to the big school. And when they get to the big school, it's all about learn this, learn that, and forget about playing. I don't know about playtimes in Greece, but I know that playtimes in England are being cut, or yard time as we call it here. In America, recess, it's a whole campaign. Recess is being cut. It's absolutely outrageous. What's even more outrageous is in the next level of school, if a child doesn't do something right in class, the punishment given to them is to take away playtime. I don't know how many of you have come across the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, but it's a list of rights that children have, or should be able to have. Article 31 is the right to play. Children have a right to play. But schools take that right away from them, not this school. Schools take that right away from them as a punishment. You can't say, can you imagine your rights being taken away from you as a punishment because you didn't complete a piece of work? No, I'm sorry, you can't go home yet. I know your job's finished for the day, but you didn't get your work done. You're going to have to stay for another 15 minutes, another 20 minutes to get it done before we allow you to go out for your recreation. Coffee break? No, you can't have a coffee break today because you didn't get that project finished. You needed to be with the CEO half an hour ago. You've got to stay till it's done. Does that happen as well? Yeah, all of those things.
You know, I have to say that there's a teacher that I interviewed, and she wants to work for us. She was working currently for the most expensive school of Greece. I don't say the name, but it's absolutely the most expensive school of Greece. And she was fired. You know why? Because in the Easter works of the children, instead of using the stapler upwards, he used it downwards. So the director said, the parents that pay a lot of money cannot see the stapler being the wrong way. This happened. But I want to ask you something. I want to ask you something. I want to tell people the criteria under which you selected school for your kids.
The criteria by which I selected the school for my children. My children don't go to school.
They are homeschooled.
In England, we can homeschool, and so my first child, my now 24-year-old, she had a little private tuition which gave her love for Greek mythology. She went to do, you have to do GCSEs, 16-year-old qualifications in maths and English. She did them when she was 17. She then did an access course for higher education. She went to one of England's top universities and came out with the first in classics. Not an easy subject. I have such a proud daddy moment. Yeah. Second child decided to go to college when she was 14 so she could do her GCSEs at the right age. She then went and did some art courses, qualification courses, and is now at university studying my profession and doing really, really well. All home educated. Yeah. She's going to come out with the first as well. Well, she has to, because her big sister got it first, so she has to get it first. Her mother got it first, so she has to get it first. It's not like we're a competitive family, but my wife got her PhD before me, and that's just not on. So I'm bitter, very, very bitter, in a nice, friendly way about that. I'm never going to get a PhD, not now, I'm too old. Brain's going. And the little one, she just stays at home and plays. Our house is a rich play environment.
Yeah, but here I want to ask you a devil's advocate question. A homeschooled kid, especially in the age of 2 or 3 year olds, doesn't lack the chance to learn to live together with a team, with other people, to deal with their feelings, to deal with very different personalities and issues that may she or he has to deal with the rest of his life. Isn't it important to give the chance the child from very early on to come into this kind of socialization?
Well, socialization is a very important thing. So in school, your child is in a class and will make friends with some, but not all of the children in that class. Now I know in England, 4-year-old has a birthday party, everyone in their class goes to their birthday party. That's kind of weird because that 4-year-old doesn't actually like everybody else in the class. But you don't invite them, you've got all these parental tensions. Why did you not invite my child to your child's birthday party? Well, your child can't come to my child's birthday party because you... And then you get all this bitterness and tension. I don't know if that's how it works in Greece, but that's how it works in the UK. One of the downsides to home education can be the lack of large groups of friends. But there are home education groups. And there's lots of stuff going on. Mida, that's the older one, went to a group called Shinies. It was a home education group. She's still got one friend from that group, many years on. Tilia went to a kind of forest school type place where she made some friends, and then of course some of her big sister's friends had little brothers and sisters who became her friends. So there was a group of 10 or 12 of them. The little one has 2, 3, 4 friends, which is sufficient. Creates enough tensions. And they go to groups and they'll do other things.
Let me ask you something. If you've been living, he's living in Eastbourne. Eastbourne is a very small town in the south of England. But
About 85,000 people.
yeah, but if you've been living in London, would you choose homeschooling?
If I lived in London, I wouldn't live in London. I grew up in London. I grew up in North London. I left there in 1988 to go and pursue a PhD and change everything about my life. And then I eventually managed to get my mother out of London, and she came and lived with us in Eastbourne. Much nicer place. But there's masses of home education in London, masses of home education groups, but it doesn't really help anybody here. But the best thing you've got in Greece, if you're interested in home education, is there's a school in Athens called Dorothy Snot.
I pay for things.
Where you can get as close as possible to home education, where children could come and explore what they want to explore and do what they want to do, where their lives is full of play. And it's not about, here is a curriculum, this is what we're going to study today, this is the outcome at the end of it. Because that doesn't work in the best interest of the growing and emerging child. Yeah? Children aren't children in order to become adults. This is something that people often think. Children, it's just a stage you're going through until you become an adult. But that's not true. Childhood exists because childhood needs to exist for all the things that need to happen in it that make the person they're going to be. Humans have the longest childhood. Orangutans, their childhood is about 7 or 8 years. That's, I think, the next closest. I have to think about orangutans. I love them. I spent a week in the jungle studying orangutans. Because, well, why not, when they're one of our closest, stop it, when they're one of our closest relatives. You can learn so much by watching the primates. Which takes me back to a point I was making before about the brain and how the neural pathways are developed. That importance of play up to about the age of 8. And then children go through a process of stabilisation until they're hitting 13, 14, 15, when their brain goes into rebound and everything starts falling apart. Which is why teenagers are whole. Has anybody got teenagers yet?
I have.
Good luck. Because it's true, what they say about teenagers, suddenly they change. And the reason they change is the brain is rewiring. Which is why you as adults don't play, but have hobbies, recreation, and things like that. Because your brain has been rewired. And that's what teenagers go through. Teenagers still need to play, but their play becomes very, very different. So when John opens the next school for when they get to 6, 7, then the school after that, when they get to 13, 14, then we can carry on having these conversations about teenagers. Probably not that relevant now, but it's just important to know.
He said so, I didn't say so.
Just building the brand, John. Question. Thank you. Who's going to ask me a question? Who's going to ask a question?
It's almost 7:30, so I suppose many of you should leave. Let's just start leaving.
As you may have noticed, I can talk forever.
Yeah.
I have so much I have to say and can say. Please.
I would like to ask when a free play should be directed. For example, I'm a kindergarten teacher.
Let's give the microphone.
Yes, I'm losing. Yes, I would like to ask when a free game in a game in a lot of children has to be directed. For example, I'm a kindergarten teacher, and when we are in the classroom and there are a lot of children at this free hour that we have, as the groups of children go to the kitchen, to the train, for example, when I have to tell some rules more strict, when I have to be more strict. For example, if I leave them free, they may roll, they may lie on the floor.
What's wrong with that?
Things.
What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
I'm asking if I have to say something, if I have to direct it.
It's a lovely question, and there is no one answer, okay? Because everything is context relevant. So I don't know where you work, I don't know what it looks like, and even if you told me, it probably wouldn't help. But the question you have to ask yourself is this: is what I am doing supporting the children's play, or am I doing something because I need to do it? If you're doing it because you need to do it, don't do it. Yeah? I'm not talking about whether they might hurt themselves. Yeah? We had a conversation about risk taking and being hurt. We're not going down that road. But if the children are doing things that you're not entirely comfortable with, get over it. But you have to. The best question you can ask is: am I doing this in support of the children's play, or am I doing this for me? And the for me sometimes is the fear of what someone looking into your classroom is going to say, because no one wants someone peering in. I say, I was looking at your classroom earlier, and what the hell? Thank you. I almost slipped up there, didn't I? Yeah, I'm English. What was going on? I saw children rolling on the floor. They shouldn't be doing that, But that's. Can you explain what was going on? Do you need to step in? Is what is happening ruining other children's play? If it's ruining other children's play in a really bad way, well, then you might need to step in and say something. But the teacher, or however label you're given, you have to be saying to yourself, is what I'm about to do going to have a negative impact on the children's play? Is it about me, or is it about the children? And I really like that question, because quite often we do things because we think we should, and we haven't fully considered what we're doing and the impact it's going to have on what the children are doing. Now, obviously, if you've got a bunch of children who found this grid on the floor, and they're here before anybody else, and somehow they've developed a game, a jumping game or a bouncing game or a rolling game on this grid on the floor, and another group of kids come out to play football. This is a conflict. Has to be resolved. How do you resolve it? Come on. I'm asking the questions now. Anybody, don't be shy. Go on.
Giving them ideas on how to play together or something.
But then you're affecting their play. This group have got a game going here, and this group want to play football. You can see they've got the ball, they start to kick it in the net, and these children are in danger. So yes, you go on.
The second attempt.
Second attempt.
Helping them observe what's happening. That something's happening here, that they take some information about the hazard and the stairs. So that's
You could. Yes, at the back.
Change them place.
Say again.
Change them place. The one group plays soccer and the other plays in another space, in another room.
So we've got children here with the grid. We've got the goals there.
I will say that they should both play, so I will take the
Goal.
yes,
Move the goal.
yes.
Move the goal to another space. Be adapted. Adapt what you're doing so that every aspect of play that the children want to engage with can happen. That's why I'm the adult in the space, because I can think more widely. Sometimes I've got no idea how to solve the problem. I say to the footballers, look, bit of a problem you playing football here because we've got this group that are doing that. What can we do? You know, we always get some smart child that says, let's get another goal and put it over there. Or we don't need the goal, we'll use the blackboard as a goal. They'll problem solve, give the children opportunities. Their brains are phenomenal. Sometimes much better than mine. Something happened recently, I can't remember what it was. And I just went to the child and went like, I'm the adult, I should have thought of that. Maybe, especially my age when it started to go. So in your particular case, you have to ask yourself, is what I'm doing about me or about the children? If what I'm doing is going to give them greater opportunities in their play, greater experiences, potentially greater opportunities, because we can never tell, potentially greater opportunities in their play, then you'll make those adjustments. But if we start telling the children how to play, it's not play anymore, is it? Yeah, because play is that freedom, that expression, that joy that children get from doing what they're doing in the moment that they're doing it. And if we were to step in and tell them to play differently, then we're running an activity. Now, John asked earlier, is there a problem with an activity? No, there isn't a problem with children doing activities. You do an activity, it has a start, a middle, an end, it has an objective. Children will learn from an activity. That candle making example I gave, the next day the children got the candle making stuff out and just got on with it. I made a mistake. I said to the children, what do you need to think about? Or I said, what do you do if you burn yourself? They go like, go run under cold, these older children, go run under cold water. And they didn't say the bit at the end, you idiot. Because why did I ask that question? That question had nothing to do with children. That question was for me. Yeah? So we have to be really conscious of that. When it's about children's play, we keep out the way. When it's about an activity, well, sometimes we'll run an activity because it will teach the children something.
I will also say here that when we adults see a problem, something, then children is most possible to see it as a problem. If we are adapted to change and we're able to change and adjust to the environment, children will do the same.
This is true. Children are incredibly adaptive creatures. They problem solve. You don't even notice them problem solving. They work it out. They try things. They try risks. They try everything. I've been watching children on the zip wire a lot here. That's amazing because they all approach it differently. You know, it keeps hitting the ground. I mean, like maybe we should lift it up so that it doesn't hit the ground. Then I saw some children who were hitting the ground resolve that problem. They held on with their hands. They put their legs over the bar as well. You know? And then they didn't hit the ground. No one told them to do that. They just figured that one out for themselves. Because children aren't stupid. And sometimes we don't give children enough respect and ability to do those things, to figure it out for themselves. Give the children the space and the time. Relax. They'll get there. Sometimes they might need a nudge. Sometimes you might need to put in a word, have you thought? But as little as possible, because that means that the children's play will continue in the way that the children want their play to continue, without me getting in the way.
Yeah. That's why in schools like ours, I mean now, when we design something new, especially in the yards, very rarely we take it up to the end. We create the basic structure, we make sure that it's safe and secure, and then we let children to find the way to exploit and use it. And this is the magic behind loose parts. Loose parts is something that's very, very popular, very fashionable. Everybody's talking about loose parts. I really doubt if 90% of educators really know how to use loose parts.
Yeah, there's this whole phrase about loose parts that's been jumped on,
Yeah.
as though, "Oh, I'm going to go to the shop and buy a loose parts kit."
This is
Okay. Another thing to not get me started on. Loose parts was a term coined by an architect called Simon Nicholson back in 1971. And he talked about the fact that the more variables there are in an environment, the more the child can play. And he said the best space is the beach. So on the beach you've got the water and the sand and the interplay between the two. You have all the debris that's been washed up by the sea. You have cliffs or whatever at the other edge of the beach. And it is one of the best play spaces. When we talk about loose parts in early education, we're talking about the things we have that children can use in ways of their choosing. And I like us to consider that when we talk about loose parts, bear with me on this, loose parts is an adjective, not a noun. In other words, loose parts aren't the things that we can name. Loose parts is the attitude of the adults who are working with the loose parts. So loose parts just become one of the artifacts that children play with in any way that they want, wherever their imagination takes them. And we have the van, which is a loose part, because the children will engage with that in many different ways. And then the more obvious loose parts are the tyres. But let's not forget, we have bushes and wood, and which the children play with, and plantings and mud with stuff in it, and anything that can be moved is a loose part that children will find ways. There's a box behind the boat full of, best word to describe it is tat, but it's toys it's artifacts for the children to engage with and to play with. The more the children can access, the more varied their play can become. But there is a problem. If there is too much stuff, children get confused and don't know what to do. So it's important to get that balance right. How do you know what that balance is? There's no definition of it. It's observing. You observe how the children are using things. You move stuff out, you add stuff in. If everything is monotone, black or white or grey, then you need to add some colour into it. But do not look at your child who picks up a red crayon and you say, "What colour's that?" Because if the child could swear, they would. Yeah? "It's a red crayon, Mummy, Daddy. I've picked up a red crayon because look, it's a red crayon and I'm going to use a red crayon. You don't need to ask me what colour it is. I really don't give up what colour it is because this is the crayon I picked up and I'm going to use it because it's attractive to me." Yeah? "Oh, how many crayons have you got on the table?" I don't give a how many crayons I got on the table. It's not relevant to my play. Go away. I don't need to count 1, Mummy, 2, Mummy, 3, Mummy, 4, Mummy. I just want to use the crayons, all right? That's what I got them out for. Yeah? When I want to count them, I'll count them, all right? Look, Mummy, I've got 5 crayons out of the crayon box. That's my choice. That's my play. I'm not playing your game. Oh, that's an elephant. Wait for it. What letter does that start with? I did some work last year in Athens and I asked the group to get in order by their first name. And I got my list and I got an English list. And it was so hilarious. They got themselves nicely in order by their first name and I went to check my list. Because this is a good way as a teacher with a group of learners to learn their names subtly. But of course my list didn't match their names because they did it in Greek. And my Greek is non-existent. Don't ask your children pointless questions. Yeah? They're playing, let them get on with it. My 7-year-old started to read in the month of April. Right? It's not a problem. She doesn't have to be school ready. Yeah, she started reading. She started reading when she was 7. She's been read to her whole life. She's heard the words, she's watched the script, she reads the stories. I read to her 2 or 3 times a day. She still loves being read to, because that's that communication, that's that closeness. She'll crawl on my lap, she'll get the tweezers, she'll pluck my ears whilst I read the stories. We're a weird family. But she's now reading, and she's completely self-taught. Because no one sat down with her and goes, so, that's a cat. How do you spell cat? Sound it out. Read that word, sound it out. She's learned all of that on her own, through her play, without that whole, I'm going to help you learn something now, by asking you, what colour shirt am I wearing today? That's irrelevant. That's back to yours. That's about me, not about her, not about them. So we always have to remember to try to be about them. I thought he was about to answer, yes, he's going to ask a question. No, he's just scratching his neck. Damn it. I'm sorry too. Thank you for existing. I like that. Again, another time. Bye.
So, you said earlier that you have a play space for your children at home.
Yes.
And would you like to describe us your play space that you, the process that you did in order to build a play space in your home? If you like.
I'll have a go. Now, it's a great question, but you need to understand that we're not just ordinary parents. Okay? We are highly informed about child development and about a whole range of different forms of early childhood education. So whether you're talking Steiner, Waldorf, Montessori, Froebel, Reggio Emilia, Pestalozzi, drag in a bit of Dewey if you want, but I'm not really so keen on Dewey. I did say Froebel, didn't I? Yeah. Whether you're going down any of these icons of early childhood development, you take what you want from each and put them together. So I am fortunate to live in a very big house. Our main living room, which is play area number 1, measures 8 meters by 8 meters across by about 5 meters deep. So it's quite a big space. I guess there's some furniture in there, but they're all playthings, apart from the cupboard with the nice posh glasses, the crystal that my mother left us. It's got to go somewhere. The fine china for special occasions. I said to my wife the other day, doesn't everybody have special china for special occasions? And of course, not everybody does. In the corner, there's windows. In the corner, there's a multicoloured silk veil. It lowers the height of the space. Underneath that is her kitchen, her washing machine, her food preparation. There's a carpet on the floor in that space, otherwise it's wooden floors. There's a carpet on the floor in that space, and then just to the right of that space there's a whole rack of books. The first rack of books. There are thousands of books in the house. That goes all the way up to the settee, and then there's a whole box of cloths that she uses for her dolls. Her dolls' pram is there. She has 2 or 3 special dolls. They have different prams. Sometimes they're her children, sometimes they're her babies. I'm not allowed to touch them. They're hers. Yeah? Not even allowed to talk to them, let alone touch them. If I want to sit on the settee, no, you can't sit on the settee. This one or that one is sitting there at the moment. Yeah? And you have to respect that, because it's her play space. Moving round away from that, in front of the cupboard with the fine china and the posh glasses. I have some very posh glasses. I've got special glasses just for drinking vintage champagne. In front of that, there's a table. On that table is various setups that change weekly, monthly. A lot of stuff which we use for counting and for sorting. I think before I came away, it was set up for some sort of party celebration with her dolls and some of her pet animals, stuffed animals, of which there are many. The big girl works in a bookshop. They sell Jellycat. I don't know if people are familiar with the Jellycat, stuffed animals, but there's a whole range of them. And so they keep appearing at home. And then on the unit just by there's a book, and the book will change monthly. There's a picture in the book, it's a book of seasons. They're beautiful pictures. They're not cartoon graphics. We have very few cartoon graphics. They're aesthetically pleasing, and they're on a frame, but the frame is draped with a cloth. So everything's made to look really beautiful. Moving around from that, there's an ever-changing installation. So it would now be Beltane, which is a pagan festival. Happens at this time of year. Just before that, there would be stuff about Easter, and it's very seasonal and will change. So at Christmas time, there'll be moss and stuff like that. As we move into the summer, that will change as well. Elsewhere in the room, there's just a mess. Yeah, because there's a mess. There's a big chest full of brio, which sometimes she decides she wants to play with the brio. There's a box of musical instruments, because sometimes she wants the musical instruments. And then there's building blocks. So all the stuff that she can access. There's a play garage with cars, which sits on top of the box of brio. If she wants the brio, we have to move that. If we want to get into the cupboards, it's a nightmare, because unfortunately it's only on posh cupboards for posh occasions. So we don't have to move stuff that much to get into those cupboards. One of those cupboards is hers. It's a larder. I don't know what she has in it. And that's that space. There's another room, which is her room. And in her room, she's got lots of wooden figures and a castle. And that's constantly being changed. Not constantly. Regularly being changed and updated and moved forwards. Things are different. Because we need to spark the imagination. And you do that by making different offerings. So that downstairs, that installation, that table, that changes. And it will change overnight. So my wife will do most of this. She will change it, make something different. Then in her bedroom, she has more cuddly toys, blankets, and stuff moves around. There's a landing outside my office. I work from home a lot. There's a landing outside my office with another collection of books. And she'll quite often sit there and just look at books or cut up paper. What is it about children cutting up paper? They love it. But it needs to be something that's offered alongside a whole range of other things. In the kitchen there's Play-Doh. She helps with the cooking, your proper cooking, sharp knives. She's been doing sharp knives since she was 3. Montessori is the one that said, give the children proper tools. Interesting statistic, English statistic, more children got hurt cutting fruit from plastic knives breaking than cutting themselves with a real knife.
You know what was the most, one of the most terrifying accidents we ever had in our school, in our old school, was the carnival time. There was a girl that was dressed a princess. I don't remember what princess. She had a long dress, so she stepped on her dress. She fell down, and the crown came the other way around, and it has some kind of pins, and the pins got in her. And she had so many stitches because she stepped on the Disney princess dress.
Yeah. Disney. There was no television in the house. If we want to show her something, then she'll get to see it on YouTube, on a computer. For her 7th birthday, she got an iPod, old school iPod, which is great for playing music, taking photographs, all that she needs to do. She doesn't need any more technology than that. Obviously, one of the children, my children, is away at university, so there's lots of FaceTime or Zoom calls. I Zoomed them last night because they'd been with me for a week and I was missing them. So we had a little chat, so she's used to that. But screen time is limited. So, and it's limited because she doesn't need to have it. Now I know, and this is, you know, adults objecting to technology is nothing new. I've got a book called The Pencil. And when the pencils were first developed, the adults complained about the children using pencils and how they would, because they were now using pencils, they would no longer be able to use the scribe and the clay tablet. You know? So things are always complaining. And that's gone on in every generation. I don't know if you're familiar with the name of Samuel Pepys. He was a diarist around 1666 in London, and he wrote, "With the advent of the coffee houses, the boys no longer play on the streets in the way they used to." And so there's been this continuous thing, and now we have it with screens. You know, television used to be known by us cynical adults in certain professions as the one-eyed monster in the corner of the room, because it would suck you in. But I also recognise, especially for single-parent families, the need to be able to sit the child down somewhere which is going to occupy them whilst you prepare dinner, or do some cleaning, or sort out a problem, because you can't be with your children 100%. So there is that side of technology which is important. But I get so frustrated seeing a toddler in a pram being pushed by an adult. So the pram is facing forwards. We never had forward-facing prams. The child was always facing the adult. I think that's absolutely crucial, because then you're still communicating with the child. Playing on an iPad. So you don't want to talk to your child? You don't want to point out the interesting things that are around? I think that's so important, that dialogue. Look at that, it's really exciting. Oh wow, I used to have a car like that. Or as John goes, oh, that's an old car, but not as nice as my old car. Those are conversations we should be having, and technology takes those away from us. And then children become dependent on the toy, the technology, and have a strop, have a tantrum when it's taken away from them. So, but if we are constantly using ours, children only know what they see. So we try to have no technology at meal times. We try to always sit down together to eat together. I think these are things that are really, really important in terms of the child and development. We're trying to train the 24-year-old not to bring her phone to the table. Trying to train me not to bring my phone to the table.
I want to say here that to share with you that when my daughter was 8, I bought her an iPad, no parental controls. Everybody was telling me that this is the wrong thing. I said this is what I believe correct. And my daughter developed an excellence in English. I'm sure because of the iPad. Because
Excellent, what?
excellent. She developed her master the English language. She was very fluent. She became very quickly fluent in English. In the school she's in a group with the native speakers. I'm 90% sure that she developed all the skill because of the iPad. Because it was the first year, I believe, she saw the French circles, all of them within one summer. But I want to say something. It's always a matter of choice. If you give child the matter like that, we'll never choose to play with iPad. If you don't have the math hole, or if you don't have the as Meynell said, a number of stimuli around, the iPad and the iPhone is a solution.
One of the problems I have, and not me alone, with games on technology is the games are created by an adult. It's an adult world that the child is entering into, not a child's world. There are a couple of games, a couple of things on iPads which the child can create just about everything in it. Minecraft is one of those. But there are also some games on your mobile devices which are designed by adults to engage children And that worries me, because as they get older and start using them independently, you don't know who they're communicating with. They don't know who they're communicating with. That worries me. That's a concern. If you're watching films with your child, if the child wants to watch a film. Watch it together. Maybe even talk about it afterwards. Yeah. As I said, there are times when you just need it to occupy the child. Yeah, I recognise that. And whilst it's not the greatest thing in the world, we all, adults, live complex lives. And all our lives are different. And we're going to have things that work smoothly and things that don't work smoothly. So sometimes we need that babysitter. Other times, use it in ways that we can both enjoy. So, the little one was, talking about some sort of vehicle. So I pulled up some screenshots to show her, because that helps contextualize good use of technology. Because other times I have to say to her, you have to wait the other side of the room and let me know you're here before you walk over here, so I can close the screen down so you don't see all the blood and gore from the violent movies I like watching. More? How did I do with answering that question, by the way? You want to come and visit my house now? I want to turn your classroom into my house.
Okay, well, unfortunately, almost 2 hours of conversation was great.
2 hours?
Almost, yeah. So, are there any last questions? Any of you? Or anything?
As you can see, I'm open to any question.
Yeah.
One last one, if I may. You mentioned about, the limits about intervene is one major limit is the safety part, which is the physical safety part.
Yeah.
Is there any point that you can foresee or see something like emotional damage, some emotional hazard there? For example, if somebody is left out of a company and they cannot join a company, a group of other people, is there any limits there that we should intervene to make something happen or not happen there, or bullying?
This is a really good question and an important question. If this child has been left out by the rest of the children, there's normally a reason for it. And that reason means that they don't want that child to play. So my role is to comfort that child. To maybe if there's another group they can join in with, maybe I can join in, I can play. Would you like me to play something with you? Yeah? All those sorts of things. What we don't do is say, come on, now, you've left this person out, they need to be joining in. Because I saw that once. There's only 3 children. 2 children playing this most awesome game, running backwards and forwards. I have no idea what they were doing. And the 3rd child came up and says, and I assumed said, can I join in? They go like, no, go away. So the child went away, and then the child came back and goes like, oh, I'm going to be joining in. It's like, well, I want to join in. They go away. And that's happened 3 times. And then the child went up to the adult in the space. I won't call him a play worker, I won't call him a teacher, because they were not worthy of those names. And the teacher took them by the hand and brought them over and said, you've got to let him join in. What happened next? The game stopped. Because they didn't want to play with that child, and the adult were in the game. So we need to be sensitive to that. But this child that you've identified is upset. Yeah? And I actually saw this in one of the classes. There's some children who seem to be friends, but on this occasion, this child did not want to play with that child. This child wanted to go and play with that group. This child and that child normally play together. This child was really, really upset. All we can do is comfort that child, hold them close, whether physically or contextually. Hold them close and make them feel loved and wanted. And maybe they'll be able to join in next time. Maybe they'll need you to join in a while. But I can't take you to join in. Let's find something else to do. Oh look, this child's not playing with anybody. Maybe they'll play with you. It's complex, And again, everything has to be taken on the measure of the here and now, because there's no one answer. Everything depends on everything else, and you will have seen what's going on. Thinking in terms of your own child being left out?
Sometimes yes, she's trying, she's very shy, sometimes now it's less, but so something like 3 months ago she was having a hard time joining a group or entering a group.
So sometimes they're not being rejected, but they don't know how to join in. So you can make suggestions, or if you know one of the other children, you could say to the other child, because remember this child, now we're talking about a child that's not being rejected, but just doesn't know how to play. Could you ask them to come and join you? Because they don't know how to ask. As long as you do it to this child at a time, it doesn't destroy their play. I never said this was going to be easy. It's not easy. There's so many permutations. And for the teachers amongst us, we don't always get it right. That's okay. It's okay to recognise there are times we will get it wrong. And then all we can do is apologise to everybody concerned, so I'm sorry, made a mistake, didn't get that right, let your boss know, because otherwise they'll tell you off, and move on. So sometimes it's about that, sometimes it's about saying to your child, this child that doesn't know how to ask, have you tried doing this? Maybe if you stood a little bit closer, they'd ask you to join in. Maybe they don't know you want to join in because you're so far away. Or, if you're really lucky, they need this for the game. You give them something they can take over. And they come, it's like, I've got a present for you, can I join in? Those are all techniques that work. We have to experiment, because there ain't no one right answer. We make it up as we go along. And the thing about mobile phones is they distract you from what's really happening.
Yeah. I don't know what's wrong with something better.
I've really enjoyed this. I really enjoy answering your questions. I really enjoy sharing my knowledge, limited knowledge, because I've still got a lot to learn. When people ask me what I do, I tell them I'm a practicing play worker. Emphasis on the word practicing. Yeah? Because I'll be practicing until the day I die, which is a long way in the future. Long way in the future. I plan on doing this for many, many more years, and I hope to meet many, many more of you. Next time I stand here and you'll have to remind me you're here, because I won't remember. But we'll have another conversation, we'll talk more things, and I'll have learnt more, and you'll have come up with more questions, and it'll be grand. What?
Anyway, our plan is to have the chance to have Meynell more English, more and more. Depends.
Yes, because we could build one of these into every trip.
Okay, we have plans, and Meynell is one of our good international associates. We have a number of them. We're going to develop even more, and we always. The reason many people actually ask me, either directly or indirectly, they ask me, why do you want to play work in school? Because what he says is usually, most of what he says is exactly the opposite of what teachers are taught in the university. But the reason we want to play work in our school is because he teaches our minds. And this is the reason I enjoy always talking with him. He's my personal proofreader. I mean, any idea that may come up in my mind, I ask him. Because I know he tells me this is bullshit. It's very honest.
There's no point in me not being honest. He's asking my opinion. Yeah, if it's rubbish, I'll tell him.
Yeah,
fine. But not just, I'm not the sort of person that's rubbish, but
it's a great thing.
Work it through, work things out. And I'm not just a play worker.
Yes.
Yes, my profession is as a play worker, but I try to be all things about play. I really try to learn more about play, understand more about play, keep up to date with the latest thinking about play, which is hard work.
He always asks, is that play? Is that play? But it's what we did tonight, is it play?
Oh, for me, this is play.
Yeah. They freely chosen to come here.
Yeah, but I don't know if they're playing. you know, we can't tell that. And but as you can see, I have thoroughly enjoyed having the opportunity to talk to you and to share some of what I know. And it's a real pleasure. So thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you so much.